hello. Oh,
Hi, welcome to Mind the Gap. We're so happy to see you. My name is Kayla. I am the project manager for 1000 Dreams Fund. It's a 501c3 focused on helping women and femmes get access to resources they need to reach their dreams, which is something quite important to today's topic. I also work with Radiant, which is a group that helps marginalized genders get into eSports. So we'll hear more from some of our other panelists about Radiant as well. But I want to give them an opportunity to quickly introduce themselves before we get into today's topic. So Kit, do you mind to go first?
Absolutely. Hi everyone, my name is Kit Dunn. I'm a marketing coordinator and project manager at Radiant. I get to work alongside our lovely Kayla. And we're a production company running events that uplift marginalized genders in esports. We also work on co-ed events where we prioritize hiring marginalized gender staff as well to give them as many opportunities as possible.
hi everyone. My name is Ash Said Hi. I am a Twitch content creator, Twitch ambassador, but also leader for the Twitch Women's Guild, one of the co-leaders with my amazing co-lead Meadow. And the Twitch Unity Guild is an incredible program on Twitch that helps marginalized people find opportunities, connect with each other, and build community on Twitch. And it's a wonderful program.
Hi, my name's Camilla Panda. I am a content creator on Twitch. I dabble with YouTube and TikTok as well, and I also happen to be a esports caster, specifically for Valorant, but I also do stuff with competitive robotics and have for 10 years with the competitive robotics.
Hi everyone, my name is Cosmic Quartz. You can call me Quartzy. I'm an artist and autistic content creator. I'm a member of both the Twitch Women's and Pride Guild. Primarily last year, I hosted a raid train called Spoon Platoon to celebrate Disability Pride Month on Twitch.
Hi, I'm Vian. My pronouns are they, them, and I am an educational and learning games designer. So I used to work at Filament, and just really love, excited to be here.
Yeah. So what is the gap? Why gaming, esports, and content creation? I think we all probably understand what the gap probably refers to, right? Underrepresentation and marginalized folks encounter, big gaps in where they want to be, but where they are currently at, and that's oftentimes due to resources, support, friends, folks in their network to help them get there, right? And that's what we're going to talk about today is how do we navigate that? How do we build a bridge over the gap to help the people behind us get to where they want to be as well? Panelists, what does the gap mean to you? Anybody can feel free to jump in, but what does the gap in gaming, esports, and content creation mean?
Well, I'll jump in first. I mean, as a Black woman in gaming and in content creation, it often means that I have to work twice as hard to get half as much, constantly. People question whether or not I know things about games. They question whether or not I'm good or even qualified to create content. And oftentimes when it comes to finding equitable pay when doing a sponsorship, that is often something that I have to fight harder for than, somebody who doesn't look or present as I do. So I think about those things often as somebody who is in a position to help others find opportunity. I do everything I can to bring those opportunities to them. As one of the leaders of the guild, we're often presented with really cool things for people to do. And so I make sure to get those in the position for people so that they can be discovered and then uplift the ones around them.
Yep, absolutely. Anyone else?
I would say in game development, it doesn't look like a gap necessarily, but I don't think I've ever had a superior or like a boss or a manager that's ever really looked like me. And that's just to say not a person of color, not a person who's like a marginalized gender. And it comes up a lot when we work together and when we talk about culture and we talk about how to make games. I think it's really difficult when you're just working with a lot of people that all look the same and have the same kind of cultural references. It's difficult to kind of jump in and be like, I also know about The Simpsons. Sorry, I also watch The Simpsons. It's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I can. So for me, as a late discovered autistic artist and creator, I find that I get very easily taken advantage of. I've definitely fallen for opportunities that seemed too good on the surface, but actually were not having my best interest at heart. And I find that not having the resources or tools to really know what sort of opportunity is aligned is really difficult for me. That gap in not having proper mentorship or proper guidance, trying to make a career out of this space is really difficult, I find.
Absolutely. And I think something that we often hear is, well, I'm just treating you like I would the boys or my friends, right? And that's kind of rooted in the fact that folks think we want equality, when in fact what we want is equity. And there's a big difference. We don't want you to treat us necessarily like the boys, right? We want you to help us be able to reach where we need to be. And so there's this reference I like to talk about a lot, so I'm sorry, panelists, I know you've heard me say this before, but there's a comic where there's a fence at a baseball game, and one person's tall enough to see over the fence, but the other two, they're too short to see. One's, a little bit shorter, and the other is even shorter than that person. And each of them need a different sized box. One needs 2, one needs 1 to be able to see. So that's what equity means, giving them the box they need to be able to see over the fence. Now, at the end of the day, what we're rooting for is liberation, and that's for that fence to be gone entirely so that we would not have to, do that in the first place, right? So, panelists, what does equity mean to you? I know it's a broad topic, and it's a big one we could probably talk all day about, but what does it mean to you at the end of the day?
I can.
Yes, please.
For me, I would love to see proper representation, especially as a demisexual and autistic person who is chronically ill. I find that a lot of the times when individuals like myself are represented, it is through stereotypes and stigmas and not necessarily expressing the nuance behind who we are as people and how we are so much more than just our identities. We have so many more goals, hobbies, struggles, obstacles, dreams than just what our disabilities or identities represent.
Yep.
I think equity looks to me like if you're in a position where you easily would receive something, giving it out to those that wouldn't get that same opportunity, right? So if, for lack of a better term, you have a boardroom full of white men and they are dealing with something that affects like a more global kind of population, like what are they doing to help everyone have a seat at the table? That's what it looks like to me.
Yep. I think all of these panelists, not to, brag, but they're all doing that in some way. So, do you have a specific instance where you had to confront a gap of equity? Please share what you're comfortable with, but how did you navigate it? How did you get through, that obvious kind of gap of equity for yourself?
I think in game dev specifically for me, it's a lot of advocating for yourself, which is exhausting, right? You're doing it all the time. I'm doing it at the doctor's. I'm doing it on the train. But it's important. It's important to make clear because, no one can read your mind and no one knows what's going on with you. But everywhere I've worked, I've always worked really closely with my managers and my boss to be like, these are the things I can do and I can do it very well. But here are some ways that you can accommodate my mental illness and other things, right? Like, I just have to have these things in my life and I will produce great work for you. I can do a great job. And I think that self-advocacy point is extremely important, but it also kind of comes from outside yourself too. It's also looking at the people around you and having them advocate for, even if they use kind of like normalized pronouns, like start being the first one in the meeting to say, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm a cis man named Shane. Like, that's great. That's wonderful. It opens up the door
Community
for everybody.
support.
Exactly.
Yeah, so important.
I know for myself, I have had someone in person look at me and go, you probably just get offers and deals because you're pretty. And instead of just, maybe acknowledging that my content is good. It's just
Valuable, even.
yeah, or even just like maybe my audience just really likes what I do and they wouldn't vibe with you, and maybe your audience wouldn't vibe with me, and that's okay. But I'm not getting things just because like I look well. I'm trying to find the right words.
It invalidates your hard work,
Thank you.
right?
That's what I'm trying to get at.
No, I know exactly what you mean, and it's true. Like, there's that pretty privilege, quote unquote, where people think that, oh, being a content creator is so easy. If I was a woman, let's say, like I could just go live and get 1 million views. And there's so much more that goes into it. There's like editing VODs, planning events, running community events even. And there's so much more behind the scenes that a lot of creators don't ever get a chance to talk about, because it's a lot of stuff that we just do behind the scenes, but we do it because we love to, right? Yeah, I know what you mean.
Also, realistically, if it was so easy to be a content creator as a woman, wouldn't more of the top content creators be women?
Oh, tell them again. Say that louder. That's true.
Yeah, I think on Twitch, the top 100, I think there were only 2 women. Even less trans women, black women. I don't think there's a single one, right? So really, I think, again, it comes back to equality versus equity, right? We want to see those numbers change. We want to see the equity. We don't want you to treat us necessarily like the others. We want you to help us get there. Come on. Which kind of goes into the next topic. Through the efforts of leaders in eSports, gaming, game dev, folks like these people here, we've definitely seen leaps and bounds, right? Like we've probably come farther than we were last year even, in some ways. But in a lot of others, we take a couple steps back, and that looks like toxicity, harassment on Twitter, game devs not feeling safe to release their games in some cases because of that, right? So these sort of online spaces and these groups that we all are a part of are so important because it kind of validates us in a way, right? And also says, hey, there are other folks like us, and we belong here. Ash, I'd like to ask you, addressing the gap in online space is essential, but how can we create safer environments, more inclusive environments for those most at risk?
I think setting boundaries and, like setting expectations, right? Like being vocal about the things that impede our progress and not being afraid to say stuff. But you're right? Like I could go on social media and talk about all of these issues that impact many of us, and then somebody will have like the trolliest response or some kind of nonsense. But, still being present. And if I see others struggling, like speaking up for them, or like supporting events, right? Like if an event is uplifting trans women, like if I'm not a participant because I'm not in that group, I can still uplift it. I can still share it with people. I can still tell people about it. There's so many ways that we can help all of our marginalized friends, reach new audiences and get their content out there. So I think some of those things would be the way.
Absolutely. I also think, something that's important and can be super helpful is finding the right mentor. I know we're talking about like support systems here, and yes, they are important, but finding a mentor in the space can also be life-changing. Have any of you had a mentor? What was that experience like? How did it change your trajectory?
I actually did have a mentor in my previous career who was a woman that worked at Coca-Cola. And she used to drive the truck and like install all of the, the stuff that you would see in the store, like the end caps and stuff, and worked her way up all the way to like a VP. And we had the same birthday, so we already had that connection, right? But seeing her story, like hearing her story and seeing where she was in the job that we had shared was so empowering. And it taught me like I belong, and I can, if I dream it, I can do it.
Yep, absolutely. Anyone else?
I would consider one of my first mentors, at least in the Twitch industry, to be Watch Holly and Mayhem Mermaid. They both helped me get on a panel to talk about queer impact in gaming on Coursera's official Twitch channel, and it was the first time they had ever spoken about queer inclusivity as a brand. And at the time, I was not in any stream teams, I was not in any guilds, I hadn't been sponsored by anybody, I was just a small creator who just had a dream, and they literally did not care about my numbers, they didn't care about, my lack of notoriety, they cared about my perspective, and it meant the world to be valued in that way and be given that chance, because it put me on such a trajectory that I was able to join the guilds, I was able to join a couple stream teams that I really resonated with those communities, and it's really helped me believe in myself a lot more and combat that imposter syndrome that plagues us all. But I think it's so important to have as much as it's important to believe in yourself, it is equally as important and impactful to have somebody believe in you. And knowing that these people had platforms and they weren't trying to gatekeep their knowledge, their wisdom, it meant the world to have them believe in me and uplift me, because I feel like we all will win when one of us is winning, especially in the industry that we're in.
100%. I think another thing to note is the worst thing they can say is no. So don't be afraid to maybe put yourself out there and ask, even if you have like a mutual connection or a friend, maybe ask them like, hey, do you mind to give a second opinion? It can be as small as that or as big as what Ash just mentioned, maybe a coworker who went through a really large journey that can shed some light on where you're going in your career, right? But I think, again, don't be afraid, to put yourself out there, believe in yourself, but don't be afraid to ask for help too. It's okay. I also want to talk a little bit about not just these communities that we have in the online spaces, but also eSports. I know if you're a gamer or you like content creation, you're probably rubbing elbows with the eSports industry already, and it's growing at an alarming rate. Like, it's super, super big at this stage. And we have Kit here from Radiant, and I'd like to know a little bit more about Radiant and how you all are investing in education and opportunity training to help amplify the efforts of marginalized genders in the industry.
Absolutely. So to start, Radiant was founded by Heather Grozo. She goes by Sapphire Online, and she has been in esports for like over 20 years. She's a world champion CSGO player, one of the main observers for Valorant's VCT broadcasts. She has been around the block, and she saw throughout the years that in women's tournaments, they're always getting lesser equipment, lesser prize pools, lesser pretty much everything, and she really wanted to change that. So that's sort of the mission we went in with, and it's just grown so much over the past 2 years. We run VCT Game Changers, which is Valorant's women and non-binary tournament series. We run the Milk Cup for Fortnite, which is for women in Fortnite, and we also run Calling All Heroes, which is for all marginalized genders in Overwatch. With those, not only do those players now have a safe space to grow their competitive skills, and we've seen the payoff from that, but behind the scenes we also focus on staffing all those events with people from those communities. And a lot of those folks have gone on to build careers in the space from that. I think we've sent about 4 people now to Gravity Media in Seattle, which is Riot's main broadcast center. So those folks are going in and working on VCT, LCS, all these incredible broadcasts. On the player end, we've also seen a lot of success. A couple names that come to mind. One is Fluorescent. She is an incredible Valorant player. She participated in Game Changers in high school. You're not allowed to participate in the highest level of Valorant until you're 18, and as soon as she was 18, she was picked up for a European professional co-ed team, and she has been killing it. Another name that comes to mind, actually very recently, Canary, 14-year-old Fortnite player who just qualified for the FNCS Last Chance qualifier. 14 years old, isn't that incredible? Imagine when she gets to be 18, what career she can have. And now she has, she was someone who actually competed in the Milk Cup last year and even went to LAN, the championship finals. So that's our hope. It's hard because sometimes people don't see the value in what we do immediately because it's a really long-term project. I remember when Game Changers first started, Riot said this is at least a 5-year plan, and it ended up, I think, being extended way beyond that. Change isn't going to happen overnight, but if you give these women and other marginalized gender folks the right environment, they absolutely can prosper. So that's our goal.
And I can contest for that because last year I was laid off, unfortunately, from a position I was at. And Radiant scooped me up and said, hey, we got a project you can help us with. And since then, I've been able to not only do, what initially I was brought on for, but grow and do more and more and more. They're always like, hey, we got something else. Do you want to help us? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. So big props to Kit, big props to Heather as well for what they're doing. I also think something that's important to kind of go off topic, I don't think I actually had it in our run of show here, so FYI everyone. I think when we talk about competitive esports, in the marginalized gender space, a big hot topic is trans women being actual competitors. And unfortunately, they receive so much backlash. Game changers, if you're a fan of Valorant and you've ever tuned into one of those, or even Calling All Heroes, it's just absolutely horrendous. And I think it's important to know that trans women belong in those spaces too, and being able to stand up and say, yes, absolutely, you deserve a spot here. But I think what Radiant is doing is amazing. So thank you, Kit. Camila, I know that you also have worked alongside Radiant too in the past. You've gone from creator to hosting live events, like you said earlier. What has that experience been like to be behind the mic and on screen, kind of representing folks?
It's been great because I know I am contributing to making sure esports and gaming overall can be more diverse. It's important to have the representation out there and being able to go, hey, like, I have this opportunity and I can make sure that I can uplift people who don't look like myself or have the same pronouns as myself and be like, hey, like they deserve a seat at the table too. So being able to do that is something that is, like, for me, something I'm just, one, really proud of, but two, I get to meet incredible people who are also putting in a whole lot of work and continue to be inspired and know that, like, even though some social media websites make it seem like gaming is very much a boys' club, it's not. Gaming is truly for everyone, and so is esports.
Absolutely. And actually, there's a photo of you there on the screen. I know you can't see it, but down there you can. There you are. And the bottom photo is actually Emma and Angel, and I want to talk about them very quickly as we speak about Valorant and Game Changers. Last year, 1000 Dreams Fund launched a esports cadetship with Riot Games that sent Emma and Angel to Dublin, Ireland. We provided funding for their housing, and Riot provided them a salary. Why is that important? Whenever you're going to these opportunities, say you're coming to PAX East, right? It's awesome, you're networking, and even if you're on a panel, amazing. But some folks don't have the resources to pay for hotel, pay for travel, what have you. So for 1000 Dreams Fund, for us to step in and help with those housing costs, take that worry away from these two cadets, and then Riot to step up and provide them a cadetship, a paid cadetship. Amazing. And I'm very excited to share they actually just started full-time roles with Riot as of last month. So, yay. And I think that's what we're talking about is equity. That's what it's about. And that's what equity looks like. Getting the behind-the-scenes experience, getting housing costs taken care of so that you can reach your end goal at the end of the day. I also think that esports, or our favorite content creators, they wouldn't be here without the games we play, right? I think a big topic that we want to chat about is representation behind the screen, the devs who are making the games. Why does it matter, right? And that's probably a question for you all. Why does it matter for the devs, staff, leadership to represent all of us when making a game?
Yeah, I can only imagine what it would be like trying to create black hair if you don't understand black hair. So having those people that understand the texture and the variation and the styles, like, is super important. For me, something as simple as making a character in a character creator that really feels and looks like me changes the whole game, like literally, because I can see myself as a part of the experience. So you know, and it also makes me feel like this, I'm a part of the story. The story is being told, and I can be a part of it rather than somebody that's just viewing the story.
Yep, 100%. I think a game that immediately comes to mind is South of Midnight. A beautiful game, but on social media, they're facing a lot of backlash. I know the community manager, Pika, whom I know and I've previously chatted with, had to go private on social media because just as a community manager, as someone who's facing forward, absolutely horrendous treatment, but all they did was make a game that they love and care about. How is that so wrong? And it tells a story, a historical story too, rooted in real life things that have happened. Like they're not telling lies on the internet. But I'd like to talk a little bit with Vienna about this topic because as a game dev, currently looking for work, FYI.
Hey, I mean, that's something that, like, that you mentioned, right? We're not lying. We're telling these stories of people that actually exist, and it's something that I think there's a lot of just, like, noise happening on social media, and I feel like the loudest people are not always correct. So they're all kind of up in arms about this stuff, but I know that myself, as someone who plays games, I adore these character creators that really care and really like take into account like Ollie Ollie World, that game that came out with skateboarding. They just have this chest thing, and it's like you can just make chests big or small. And I was like, this is great. This is amazing. And there's so many different ways that you can change your body, and it doesn't feel very gendered. It doesn't ask you what your gender is. It doesn't matter because I'm just like a character and I'm putting this little mold together. Yeah. So I would say, like, even when I was a QA tester, my first role, I worked at the studio on this game that will never come to light. But my first thing that I did in my year of working there was like, I was just like working with the art team, and I was like, why is our character creator like this? Like, why don't we have different body types? And for like months, we worked on making different body sizes. We changed all the clothes to fit for different body types, and it was a lot of work, but I was so proud of our team, and I was so happy that they just cared enough about the players playing that they see themselves in the game. And I wasn't the only person that like looks like me on that team, but I think it sometimes just takes a little bit more voices to say, like, here is the cost-benefit analysis of why this is worth doing and why we should spend more time just fleshing this stuff out.
I think it's really important to have people in the room because they're going to ask questions, right? Like they're going to ask questions like, why are we telling the story this way? Why are we not including pronouns? You know, like why are we not including certain types of stories that could have, you know, like references to historical things that happen in real life. So I think having people in the room of various life paths can really help you understand like how to tell a story that will make people feel like, okay, this is awesome.
Yep.
And also help people accept themselves a little bit more too, because when they see themselves portrayed in video games or in media, and accurately so, it can kind of help remove some of that internalized shame that comes from so many stigmas that are just inaccurate, because you're finally feeling validation, right? Like, oh, I am like okay for feeling like this, and this is proper representation, and it can then in turn lead somebody to feel motivated to follow their dreams in the industry and then create even more stories about their lived experience, and it just compiles, you know.
Well said.
And I worked on a lot of client projects for Filament, and a lot of clients, they like kind of unquestioningly are like, well, we want boy, girl, X amount of NPCs. We want 10 of boys and 10 of girls. And I'm like the first person in the room to be like, what is distinguishing a boy from a girl NPC? And why can't there just be 20 NPCs with like maybe different pronouns if we need to refer to them? Like, it's just it doesn't add much to the development process. It just changes it a little bit. And it's really, it really doesn't, a lot of that stuff doesn't need to happen, and it's data that we don't use in the game. So it's like questioning all these parts of making games and who we're making it for, right?
Authentic inclusivity is really important, because if you're just creating diversity to add numbers and not actually prioritizing the values and identities and experiences of these identities, then it's not worth doing, honestly.
Totally.
Absolutely. I think you both kind of answered my next question, but just to reiterate, diverse teams make better games, period. So I want to ask everyone, what can individuals do to continue to bridge the gap? We're hearing a little bit about our experiences, what we've encountered or what we're even doing, but as an individual walking out of this room right now, what can they do to help bridge the gap? It's a big question. I know I saw a lot of you like, oh gosh, I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
Ash actually kind of hinted at something I was thinking about earlier a lot. There's so many ways, big and small, to support marginalized genders and to further these initiatives. Something as simple as, like you said, like even if you're not a part of an initiative, you can still support it. When we want to continue doing products, we have to submit viewership numbers, and we want those viewership numbers to be strong so we can continue to do this for years and years and really make a difference. So just like even having up on the side, or you don't, even if you don't have time to watch, just like pull up the tab. You're contributing your number to the live stream. Also, just practicing mindfulness, like Ash said earlier, if you're in a position where you're able to offer opportunities, just be mindful. You're not a bad person if you haven't, diversified your team yet, but now that's kind of in your mind, maybe think, hey, how can we bring someone new in, someone with a new experience that, just to make the team a little bit different. It'll only elevate everyone on your team.
Courtesy, did you have something to add?
That was kind of what I was going to say, but it's true. I think it's important to not only uplift people in various marginalized communities, because the oppression affects us all. Even if we have different identities, we still experience this similar stigmas and similar struggles. And especially like keeping an eye out for opportunities for your friends, especially now, artists and creators need your support more than ever, even if it's not on a large scale like we talked about earlier. If you have an artist friend that has a small business, commission them for a pet portrait or whatever it may be. Like, you don't have to be a video game dev in order to support your creative friends, because it is so important now to foster those dreams and that creativity, because at the end of the day, when COVID hit, what everyone relied on most were TV shows, media, movies, music, things to help keep us and bring us comfort during difficult times of uncertainty. And without the support, creativity won't exist, and we won't be able to thrive and share our stories in meaningful ways.
Yep.
I think something else I will say is like checking your privilege, and not in that like combative, like fight me in the alleyway, but like if you do have the means and you're building a team, or you just have financial ability, throw money to a Kickstarter that's really like putting forward these ideals that you really care about, that's wonderful. That's also great ways that you as an individual can contribute.
Absolutely. I think in a more personal setting, like when you are trying to advocate for someone, a lot of people are they're afraid of the backlash, right? What if someone comes at me? Or I think we've hosted a similar panel last year where that was a question. What sort of advice would you give to someone who's afraid of speaking out because of the potential backlash?
Yeah, that's tough.
And I think, not to interrupt or cut ahead, but I think do what you can, of course, and keep your safety in mind as well. I think we can sit here and say any advice, but at the end of the day, every situation is different, and please do not put yourself in harm's way to speak out. But any other additional advice you might provide?
I don't know. I guess maybe I'm a little bit more bold than people who deal with this kind of troll nonsense all the time, but I still kind of go out there, and if people like have a lot of nasty stuff to say on social media, I don't read it, I'm like, I'm not gonna let somebody who doesn't understand me like dictate what I think about myself. Like, they don't know me, they don't know anything about my life, they don't know anything about my work. Like, this is somebody on the internet who is sad and upset. And if that's the way that you get your pleasure, like, why should I stoop to that level? That's how I think about it. And the reason why I think about it that way is because when people see the strength in me, that inspires them to know that they're so much greater than that. you know? So if they're like, yo, Ash could do that, man, I could do that too, because it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
I think it's so empowering to be bold. But if you are someone who's a little more introverted and shy, I think just holding space for these people to either vent or share their experiences with you in a safe environment is so much more impactful than you might realize. And it is through my own Twitch community that I started to accept utilizing they pronouns more over the past year. And when I was speaking on the Coursera panel, I actually got to teach people about they pronouns and neo pronouns and stuff, and it's helped me accept them and normalize them for myself more just from other people holding space for me in that way. So I think it creates a lot more impact than you might think. Like one moment of conversation could linger in somebody's mind that they had that support for weeks, if not months to come, honestly.
Yep.
And I am not a content creator, nor do I wish it upon myself. You guys are doing God's work. But I will say I've been leaning on my network. I've been leaning on the mentors and internal people that I know and really having conversations with them about what to do next and how are they coping, right? Like everybody's going through it right now. So it's totally like lean on your community. We all have things to say and we all are here for each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my final question before we kind of get ready for some Q&A, looking ahead of the next 5 to 10 years, what are your goals for, equity and the visions of where we go from here? And to be fair, I'm just trying to get through this year. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make it through this year.
For real.
100%.
I think a very easy one was seeing women as like some of the top streamers on a platform like Twitch, YouTube, TikTok.
Yeah.
That would be really nice to see. I feel like, we're doing a lot of work. Someone's going to get there.
Yeah.
And we're all going to celebrate when that day happens.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I would love seeing more women in production, like directing, camera work, and doing like a whole women-led eSports team, like that to me, I don't see enough. Like if I go to a show and, like they have like competitive stuff, like seeing women competitors like playing stuff like Smash or, like all of those like super competitive games. I want to see more of that because, hey, maybe I might want to join a team one day,
Yep.
Equal pay
Yeah,
and
that's
financial transparency in the creation space. It is so important. I've been unemployed personally for about 1.5 years, and I have a bachelor's degree, so it really goes to show there are gaps there, 100%. I know I have a lot to offer, and it's just waiting to find that opportunity, and there's so many more people just like me too who deserve the opportunity and just with proper resources can do so much with the ideas that we have.
Love that.
I would say my hopes and visions for the future are kind of happening already. It's happening slow, but it's happening. Like I'm seeing a lot of indie devs. There's that game Venba, amazing, beautiful game about like kind of reconnecting with your culture. This is like a person who's Indian who's like trying to rediscover like his mom's relationship with their food and their culture. These games exist. Like these games are beautiful and they're playable and they're great. And these are all devs that deserve your money and your time. And I think like those games really like reach out to me through my heart and into my spirit as why we make these games, right? These games are here for you guys to play, and they're part of us and they're part of our stories. And I think that's the most important thing that I really appreciate about making games in general.
Can I add on to that?
Yeah.
So I saw a direct one year, I think it was like 2022 or 2023, called the Wendy's Direct. And that direct featured developers and games based on Caribbean, which is where my family is from.
Nice.
And so it blew my mind.
Yeah.
First of all, I didn't even know that there was a dev community out there of people who are creating games from the West Indies and was telling stories of people that lived in the West Indies or like maybe their games took place there. And that to me, like, I think I started to cry when I watched that because I was like, yo, somebody out there is telling these stories. I was like, now everybody's gonna know about oxtail and all this kind of stuff. So that really made me feel happy, you know? So I think another thing would be seeing more games that tell those kinds of stories that you might not have heard.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other words before we? So the final thing I want to do is just give you all an opportunity to share a little bit about, where others can kind of take part in these online communities to get support. One that I want to immediately shout out is Game Industry Job Hunt. That's how Vian and I actually met last year. And I was like, hey, anybody want to go to PAX East? I actually have a spot on a panel and we'd love to have a game dev. And since then, we've been able to do this again. So it's really awesome. But I know we have a couple here on screen now. I'd like to just let you all take a moment to maybe talk about each of these.
Sure, I can kick it off with Radiant. If you want to get involved with Radiant, you can visit our website, which is just radiant.gg. And we also have a Discord, which I think is just discord.gg/radiant. And I think all of our socials are at radiantgg. And we're pretty responsive anywhere, so if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Shout outs to the Twitch Unity Guilds. That's my home. So the Twitch Women's Guild is incredible. Applications are open in general for all the Unity Guilds. So that's the Women's Guild, the Latin Guild, the Pride Guild, and the Black Guild. So if you want to be a part of that community, apply. And all you have to do is identify with that particular group. And Twitch will go through your application and then let you know if you're in. Most of the time, people get in. So I would say make sure to do that. And the link should be available if you Google search like Twitch Unity Guilds, it'll bring you to the Twitch help, the Twitch, the page, like the
Creator
help page.
dashboard?
Yeah, the dashboard, yeah. And it'll tell you where to apply, so.
Yep.
Also, fill out your streamer survey.
Yeah, fill out your streamer survey, do that, yep.
Go ahead. Anybody else? Anything else you want to share? I'll end us off then on 1000 Dreams Fund. Just again, project manager for this nonprofit. We've funded over $500,000 into the hands of femmes in the gaming, content creation, and eSports space over the last 5.5 years. It's been a really wonderful program to be part of, and I've met all of these folks through my work there in some sort of way. I'm also a Pride Guild mentor too, and a Women's Guild member. Don't be afraid to join these spaces because people want to help. People want to help you get there. They want to provide you resources. They're gonna listen to you. You need insight. You need advice. Whatever that is, trust me. Someone wants to help you. You belong here. And yeah, I think that's it. Any final words from you all?
Thank you for being here and listening to us today, honestly. I think you being here at this panel is already a huge step in the right direction on creating equity within our own personal lives even. So congrats to all you all for doing that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, we'll be here for the next 15 minutes.
Yeah. Support your local indie game dev.
Yes, there's so many indie game demos at PAX
And
right now.
here.
But also, I'm sorry.
Play their games, like showcase their demos, wish list their games, talk about it, stream it, like that helps a huge amount.
Yeah, absolutely.
Word of mouth is still such a strong form of awareness.
Yeah, absolutely.
No questions?
Any questions?
Oh,
yes,
go
please.
Yeah,
There's
you can
microphones
jump up
up
to
here
the mic. There's 2 mics over there.
Sorry, they sized it for me.
Thank you. Hey, I'm Evan. Thanks for taking the time to do this. My question regards kind of navigating the space and resourcing. My context, I grew up in a place and a time where this wasn't even on the radar. And mostly through mistakes and learning and building relationships, you just kind of learn and grow. But the vernacular, the space, and the opinions and what's right and what's wrong they change pretty rapidly and can be conflicting at times. And that's challenging to navigate, I think, in a lot of ways. So resourcing that might be good, or if there's a centralized space that you could go to that stays updated with, this is the common cool of thought, these are some best practices. Are there things like that are available that folks like myself can point to and educate other folks as we kind of navigate it forward? Because it's difficult to kind of stay up to date with what the modern thing is without making a mistake first. And over time, that's not so fun to kind of have to learn about it that way. So yeah, just wondering what resources might be available kind of from your perspective for my context.
First off, I think a wonderful question, and I think a great first step for anybody who's trying to maybe educate themselves in a lot of ways, because similar to you, grew up in a really small town, and although my Nintendo 64 was my best friend, and I am an avid gamer, I had to learn as I went too, and so I faced that challenge. I think a big thing, and I'll let other folks chime in here, is surrounding myself with the right people, and what I mean by that is, like we all have said, is having kind of a diverse group of folks to come to with those questions, or even learning from them themselves. But I think, does anyone have any other resources, or like they mentioned, like a one-stop shop?
Low-key, that doesn't exist, and as a queer person, I have not been on social media since like 2020, so I'm probably behind, and I know this isn't helpful, but I think it's actually part of it is to grow and to learn and to make those mistakes.
I was gonna say, mistakes are okay. Showing that you're willing to learn is actually more important than making the mistake to begin with.
And it's not fun. It's super not fun, but it's part of the process, and we're all kind of learning together. I know sometimes the internet can be mean, but we low-key are all learning together.
Yeah, none of us are perfect.
Yeah, I don't even know anything about TikTok, so you're good. If you're making mistakes about trying to address someone properly, I'm giving you
the
it's
pass.
chill. Yeah, you're good. You're
I think
trying.
intent is the biggest thing.
Yes.
Sure.
If people understand that your intent is hey, I want to help or support or learn, and I'm ignorant, that will disarm people and then be okay, here's what you need to know.
Sure.
Absolutely, that's how I would approach it. So if I knew you were coming to me Ash, I want to learn about this, I'd be okay, let's go, I'm gonna tell you.
I also think one last thing on that is nobody is a monolith for everyone, right? And so the way that I feel, is not going to be the same as Kit feels, or the next person beside Kit, right? So, like Ash said, intent is important, and learning is important, and mistakes are okay. But I think a panel like this is great. Hey, how do these folks feel? Now you know. And it's something you can take back and hopefully learn from at the end of the day.
Yeah, what's your hottest take that you're confused about? We got you.
No, it's nothing specific, I think, which is great. Yeah, everybody say the worst thing you've done ever. 1, 2, 3. I think it's a lot of work to teach through modeling. I think it's a great way to learn, but I think I find myself often at the front lines of the barrier between understanding and empathy in these situations. And so I think it's just challenging to navigate in a way that sticks. I like ideas that stick, like systems that work, those kinds of things. So yeah, is there a way to stay connected as you become more aware, or if those resources get developed, or things what would be who do I need to follow to stay up to date on this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, you probably all want to say something, but I feel what Kayla was saying is really great, having a group of trusted people that it's a safe space to kind of fail in front of and be listen, I heard this thing and it sounds insane, but what? And even me saying insane, it's probably not great, but we're trying our best.
We're all learning.
We are doing our best.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sometimes too, if feel free to, I can say, at least for myself, reach out to me, and I'm sure any of us would feel the same way. Usually if you can find one person who seems like a trusted resource, they can kind of point you in the right direction to what you're looking for, depending on, do you have a student who's looking to get into eSports or content creation, there's going to be slightly different resources for those things. I think we're all a little connected in all those communities, but usually if you can find one person or even one community. I think I got started in all this. I used to be a music teacher, so I took a hard right turn into gaming. And I was starting Valorant, which was not a great experience as a new FPS player. and woman. And I just Googled women's Valorant community, and I found something called Galorants, and that's kicked off my entire career. Yeah, so sometimes it's like not the easiest answer. I wish there were, maybe that's an idea. We should just do like a master talk at this point. But yeah, if you can find one space, it'll kind of branch out from there, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
So please, I'll go to this slide again. Any of these places, please start there, and we'd love to have you. Any other questions or discussions? Like, we're here to chat. Yes, please.
Yeah. There's a mic over there in the, yeah.
All right, so I heard you say that none of you are a monolith, which I appreciate. But I think the reality is that because there's so few streamers who look like how more marginalized people look like people are gonna look at you and think like, okay, all people like that must think like this, or so how do you deal with that pressure that you know that there's so many people out there who don't have that platform, who don't have that voice, but you still, like, people are gonna look to you for that? Like, how do you deal with all that pressure? I guess I'm trying to get back into it myself. I used to have a big YouTube channel, but I got off of it after all these like death threats and stuff, because people, people are like, well, you can't say that because, and I'm like, I'm just speaking my authentic voice, but I feel like that, like, just the sheer pressure of it and the anxiety of like, what if I say the wrong thing? Or like, what if I say something that's not good for the community of other people that don't have this platform? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that is a lot of pressure. I mean, as a leader of a very large group, I am straight transparent with people. I'm like, I don't know everything. I will also make mistakes. I will say things that might be inaccurate, and I own it. I just straight own it, and I say, but here's what I know from my perspective. And I will say, if that's not fully the right information, if you find out that that's not fully the right information, I will go out and find the right information.
Yeah.
So that's how I try to approach that. But it can be difficult, exactly like you said. If you say the wrong thing, people are they want to be the internet police and call you out and say lots of like terrible stuff. But I think as long as you take responsibility and say, hey, I'm trying to do better, the right people will appreciate what you're trying to do.
And it's okay if not everybody's aligned. Like, everybody is not always going to be meant to be in your specific community. Just focus on finding the people that do uplift you and do support you through that learning process and through that development, because your creativity is important. And it is hard to be a creator in any sense of the word. So I hope that you do try it once again in the future if that's something that you choose to do. Like, I do hope that you get the support to do so, because I believe that everyone's voice is important and should be heard.
Yeah, and I do think a good support system is helpful, even if it's just one person who can be there. And if you do feel like you messed up, or maybe you misspoke, or like you said, you're being your authentic self, and maybe that is wrong to some other people, but they probably were not meant to be in your, vicinity anyways, or in your community anywho. So you're not going to make everyone happy. That's just the way it is. But having that one person that you can kind of rely on to kind of ground you and bring you back and say, hey, you were just being yourself, speaking your truth, speaking who you are, I think that can be really helpful and validate you in a lot of ways.
And having that disclaimer too, like, I'm not speaking for everyone. This is my lived experience and everything, to help just bring that awareness that you aren't trying to speak for everybody's perspective on the matter. So.
One liberating thing someone told me recently, you can't say the wrong thing to the right people. So it might be the wrong thing to someone, but they're not your people then, and your people will find you.
Yep.
I also want to add, it is great to have your one person to talk to and everything. When it comes to, like, content creators and professionalism and all that, it's nice to have that coworker to talk to as well.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily the best friend in your whole existence that's also doing YouTube, but just another creator that makes something similar to you that you both can bounce ideas off of, or just be like, hey, I don't understand why this algorithm is doing this weird thing, but this is stinky poo-poo.
And be like, I made a mistake. And they're like, man, me too. Like,
Yeah.
everyone makes mistakes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I can attest to that. Camila and I have definitely shared quite a few DMs of this is stinky. We have. Thank you so much for the question. Do you have a question for us?
You place the links to the communities regarding eSports and streaming. I was wondering if there was an equivalent or similar resource for people looking to get into the game development?
You can talk to me.
Okay, you specifically.
Yeah, me, I'm the monolith. I am the trans game development police.
All hail.
There is a bunch of random Discords and a bunch of Slacks that I'm part of if you're in the Northeast. There's a Boston dev Slack, we can chat. I wish I could just like give you like
QR code.
Yeah, I wish I was ready, but it's just a disparate community.
We just scan you and we're in.
Just like my face. Yeah. But yeah, we can chat after this and I'd love to talk.
Yeah.
And just a second question I had, do you have any advice for people who have seen the importance of networking and communicating with people, but one of the barriers to entry is that, say, they have a severe anxiety disorder, and the possibility of upsetting someone makes them feel like the apocalypse is occurring on their face?
Hi, I would love to take this one as an autistic person.
Yeah.
I don't know how to network. I just bond over similar shared special interests. And that has always been my in to make friends since I was 5 years old, finding other people who like Pokemon, okay? And the conversation just naturally flows. It happened earlier. But yeah, anxiety can be so difficult, and it can prevent us from believing in ourselves and even like pursuing certain opportunities because maybe our imposter syndrome and our brain worms are telling us that we don't deserve them, or that person wouldn't want to talk to us, etc. We got to ratio those brain worms, do the scary thing anyway. If you find a pin that someone likes, if you find a similar game that someone likes, use context clues, visual, like I'm wearing a bunch of Pokemon stuff, talk to me about Pokemon, right? Like something like that to help bridge the gap and like kind of ease some of that initial jitters, and then the rest might kind of flow a little easier.
I literally said I love the glasses, like the dice on the glasses, and that's how we started our conversation.
Go to basic social interaction, find something they're wearing, and tell them it's nice.
Yes.
Pretty much. Yeah.
I will say too, something that changed my framing around networking is like, this is not a transactional moment. And you know, sometimes people just don't have work for you and it just doesn't work that way. But I always tell myself that people want to talk about themselves and people want to help generally. And if they don't, they just say no, and you're good, you're alive, and it's fine.
And you never know what connection you make now, even if there isn't an opportunity available now, what that can lead in a year or 6 months down the line too. So it is always good to make those genuine connections because you never know where it can lead to.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I do sort of, oh, no, go ahead. Please feel free to sit back down.
I was just gonna say thanks.
Yes, absolutely. I think I have sort of a grounding ritual in a way, or I also kind of repeat in my head what I'm going to say as well. I practice it a little bit, and then after a while, it starts to get a little bit easier and easier as time goes on. So like that first interaction of a convention, my hands are shaking, I'm sweaty, I'm clammy, I'm nervous. But then after a while, you're like, oh yeah, this isn't so bad, this is okay. And it becomes a little bit more ritualistic in a way. But yeah, having something that kind of brings you back down, if you are feeling that anxiety or feeling very anxious, can be helpful as well.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world if you do or don't network. So also we can chat after this, and that'll be nice.
Awesome. Well, I think we're almost done. I think we only have 1 minute left, so final question. Yeah.
I will say this as fast as I can, which I can do because I'm from New Jersey. So, anxiety, liver here too?
Yes.
ADHD?
Yes.
I got it all. So, I stepped away from streaming for about 6 weeks or so because of grad school. Finished my semester this week, yay. So now that I'm trying to get back into it, I'm noticing that I am having a field day trying to get over the hump of starting back up again. Because every time I want to sit and stream, it's like, I don't know what to stream, I don't know what to do, and then I just sit there and I get none of it. Advice?
The longer you're gone, the harder it is to come back. I once went on a 3-month hiatus because I had to move, and it's not easy. So I just want to like hold space and like let you know I totally feel where you're at right now. But I believe in you, and I think that you can do it. And like Kayla was saying earlier, like having that plan in advance, like maybe you play a special interest game that you might really love and find comfort in, something you know your community resonates with. Just make sure at the end of the day you're having fun, because I think that is the most important thing.
Yeah.
It's easy to get a lot of pressure in our head when you're doing it as a creation space thing, but
That's what my friend said, yeah.
I also want to add, that's normal.
we all face
Like-
this, yeah.
Going on an extended break, it's pretty normal for someone to just be like, I don't know what to do. I can't hit go live. It's totally normal.
Yep.
Thank you so much for your question, and thank you all for being here as well. And yeah, thank you panelists too.
Yay.
Have a good weekend.
We did it.
Cool.
We're done. GG. I'll do great.